So we've touched on something that I've called reporting personas in the video before, and that's essentially your buyer personas like we have in marketing, but for who you're reporting to. So you might have quite a few reporting personas in your business. It really depends on what kind of structure you have, but for the most part, it might be somebody more senior than you in marketing, so like a CMO type person, and then let's say a CFO, the CEO, maybe the head of sales or the CRO, and typically also in smaller startups, you will have to report back to the board, or at least you'll have to give your CEO something to give to the board, right? So I've created a little list of questions, and when I say little, there's a few in there, when it comes to understanding that role. And you could use some very typical buyer persona templates if you wanted to do that, but I wanted to take you through those questions with a CFO in mind. So just as an example. So there's a few sections in here, and again, the downloadable will be in this course module. So at the bottom, you can find the downloadable, and let's talk about understanding their role. So what is their primary role, and what is the responsibility of that person in your business? So for a CFO, their primary role is to make sure that the money is well managed within the company, that they can pay their bills, that they make the growth targets they should be making, that they pay their taxes on time, that they maybe have enough cash flow, that they spend money efficiently. Those are the kind of responsibilities they have and what they oversee within the business. And then my following question to understanding their role is, how does this person fit into the decision-making process within the business, but also within your life as a marketer? So for the CFO, they're probably somebody who's going to be looking at your budget and signing off your budget for the year. Same for the rest of the business. So there'll be somebody that looks at the marketing and sales targets to make sure that they're aligned with what the business should be achieving. And there'll also be the person looking at things like cutting back costs. If the economy is not going well, they'll be the ones that are adjusting the costs and the goals for the business. The next section here is determining their information needs. So what type of information is the most critical for this persona? So for the CFO, it's probably going to be kind of more the financial side of things. So if you could get data on, for example, how well people convert from different channels potentially, or if you don't want to go down that road, looking at what makes a really great customer. So the customers that do renew or the customers that pay quickly, what do those customers look like? They'll also obviously want to know about your spending and what returns that's bringing. So talking about ROI. Now, I'm going to get into what not to include, but here I wouldn't include per channel ROI because it's a little bit complicated. But that's, I guess, what they want to see. They'll won't want to see things like, your creative vision for the marketing, or, how many clicks you're getting on social media. That's not the reporting persona, for this. And then the second bit of kind of determining what information they need is looking at what level of detail does this person want. Do they want a high level overview? Do they want like a data analysis type thing? Now, this will depend on, I guess, what the purpose of the reporting you're doing is. So if you're asking for budget, they'll probably want to see how you built up your budget, and they'll want a bit more of that data analysis. But if you're updating them on your quarterly performance, you'll probably want to stick with the headline data. So just have a think about what level of data do you need, because more is not always better. The next section here is identifying their communication preferences. So how does this persona want to receive their information? For CFOs, skip the memes, the images, the creative dazzle, go with graphs and tables and numbers. I've had some incredible feedback in my life about that. I'm a marketer that's generally on that side anyway, but the CFOs really appreciate that because that's the language that they speak. And then the other thing here is, what is their frequency preferences? So how often do they want to receive these updates? What updates are valuable to them to receive at what pace? Again, you might be doing a couple of different types of reporting with each persona, so have a think about what frequency those things are, and you can simply ask them if you want to find out. The next section in understanding your reporting persona is assessing their technical understanding of marketing. So what level of understanding does this person have with marketing metrics? If they're a CFO, they're probably quite good at the metric side of things and understanding the maths. but they might not be very good at contextualizing the marketing bit and what it means for the business when those metrics are presented to them. So you might have to do a little bit of extra work around that. And then the second question here is, how much contextual information and explanation do they need for the various metrics? So if you're going really deep and you're talking about let's say the buying cycle and how many touches you need and how that then relates to the kind of attribution model that you have in place, all of those things, whilst they'll understand on a mathematical level, probably they won't understand on the kind of theory side of things and on what it actually means. So you're going to have to do a lot of explaining when it comes to that, which is completely okay. Just be aware with each metric, there'll be a different level of context and explanation that you need to get into, and decide what that might be. Next section here is understanding decision-making style. So is the persona driven by data, or are they maybe driven more by narrative and by storytelling? So I think this is quite a personal thing. So for a CFO, I'd say they're more data-driven, but they might need a really good narrative with that data at the same time. That really highly depends on the person. And I think you can find that out by looking at how they present data. Not present data, how they present things and what they focus on, and kind of mimic that with them. Again, if you have the kind of open communication that you should have, you can just simply ask them, how do you make decisions? How can I better explain things to you and make it make sense, essentially? And then the second point to understanding their decision-making style is what kind of data or insights have previously driven them to making decisions or taking action. So that's that kind of example piece, but maybe you can ask somebody if you don't know, previously X has happened at the company, how did you get to this conclusion? And then what did you do based on that? A lot of the time, for example, CFOs will be more data driven and more black and white because they're looking typically at performance numbers, but that isn't always the case. And again, just have a think about and have a little investigation into that specific person. And saying that, whenever your CFO changes in the company, you'll probably have to adjust this a little bit because it will depend on that person. But the more specific you can get to that person, the better, right? We've got two more sections. One is gauging the person's priorities and challenges. So what are the primary concerns this persona has within the organization? If the CFO, all they're worried about is increasing their profit margin, that means that any kind of suggestions that you have towards things that aren't going to be doing that when it comes to marketing are probably not going to go down very well. So you're going to have to find different ways to talk about that stuff. Or for example, if their priority is raising the next funding round, then that conversation is going to be about, okay, what does marketing need to do and what do we need to look like to get to that funding round? So you can have much more targeted conversations, and you can be much better at strategizing and getting what you need from them when you do base those conversations and reporting in those parameters. Finally, feedback and adaptation. So asking for feedback is key. If you're new to a business or if you've just been promoted and you've started reporting up, you need to ask for feedback. And I know that it's hard, but at the end of your presentations, pop them an email and be like, hey, thank you for, listening to me. I'd love to get my reporting down as well as I can, essentially, for you. Could you suggest 2 areas that I can improve on, and maybe also give me an area that really worked for you? Be specific when you're asking for feedback. Don't just ask for feedback as in like, could you give me some feedback on my presentation? That's really hard. This is my inner performance management person coming out. So ask for specific feedback, and then adjust your reporting to that feedback and make sure that they know that you've adjusted for them. So do a little comms around that and be like, hey, last month you fed back to me that you wanted more of this and that. Here's this and that. Does that work for you? And again, ask for that feedback at the end of that presentation. Now, the last point in here is, how has this person's needs or preferences evolved over time? That's something that you might innately know, or something that you might want to keep track of. I like to think about this, but it's not the most critical point. But if you do see that their preferences are changing over time, it might be a good conversation to have about why, or have a think about why. Because, for example, how a CFO might do reporting might change quite drastically pre-funding or post-funding, and that's totally okay. But you might feel a bit put off by like, oh, whoa, like they're asking me for all of this stuff. But there's probably a good reason why, because they need to present different stuff themselves. So have a think about that, and if there's something that you want to talk to them about, or something that you want to clarify, like why have things changed, again, have that conversation, because it's going to make your reporting much more effective, and it's going to make you both be on the same page at the same table. I hope this helps. I know this is a lot of questions to go through, but you don't have to take them all. Take what you need and what you feel like is going to help you. Again, the download for this is in the course, so grab that and enjoy it.